Today, we will discuss 3 different ways to target black's most vulnerable square, f7, in the Scotch game after the move pawn to d4. These strategies are effective, especially for players rated up to 1800, and can lead to quick victories. One of the riskier, but potentially rewarding moves is knight to g5. This move aims to target the f7 square, and on the next move, you can play bishop to c4 to further attack f7. Most opponents will likely respond by playing pawn to h6 to dislodge the knight. Instead of retreating the knight, you can capture on f7 with knight takes f7, exposing the black king. The black king is compelled to capture the knight since all your attacking pieces are focusing on it. After the king captures, you can play bishop to c4 check, attacking the king once again. Black's typical response is to move the king to e8 in an attempt to find safety. At this point, you have set up a forced checkmate within 6 moves. You can play queen to h5, delivering a check to the king. If the king moves, you can execute a checkmate similar to scholar's mate by playing queen to f7. It becomes evident that black is in a precarious position, and you can sustain your attack by playing bishop to f4, forcing the king to move, and creating various winning possibilities for white. If black chooses different moves, such as not capturing the pawn on d4, the game's course will deviate from this specific gambit. If you have any questions regarding this strategy, or would like to analyze alternative scenarios where black makes different moves, please let me know. Let's continue with the second trap in the Scotch game, after the initial moves of the chess game, where white plays pawn to e4 and black responds with pawn to e5, followed by white's knight to f3 and black's knight to c6. These are standard opening moves. We will still focus on the Scotch Gambit with the move d4. Instead of the riskier knight to g5, a more logical move is bishop to c4, developing the bishop and maintaining control over the extra pawn on d4. When black plays bishop to c5, a natural move developing the bishop and protecting the pawn on d4, you can play pawn to c3. This move threatens to capture the pawn on d4 and attack the bishop. The most common response by black is to capture on c3 with the pawn, which turns out to be a mistake. It allows you to play bishop takes f7, a powerful move. By move 6, you have already reached a winning position. Black's options are limited. If the king captures the bishop on f7, it is more or less forced. You can follow up with queen to d5, creating a double attack on the king and the bishop. This allows you to regain material with interest. In most cases, black will move the king back to e8, aiming for safety. If black moves the king to f8, it only worsens the situation, as you can capture on c5 with check. Instead, I recommend playing an in-between move, queen to h5, to induce black to play pawn to g6. This move weakens the diagonal and sets up future attacking opportunities. After capturing the bishop, the position becomes quite hopeless for black. Despite not appearing as if you can checkmate black within a few moves, the black king is stuck in the middle of the board and unable to castle. Additionally, the weakened diagonal from g6 to c2 provides opportunities for your attack. You can continue your development, castle, play knight takes c3, and follow up with bishop to g5. With simple moves, you can exploit black's weaknesses and secure a win. An example game to illustrate this is when black played queen to e7, offering a queen exchange. However, you want to keep the queens on the board to continue your attack on the black king. White responded with queen takes c3, gaining a pawn and attacking the rook on h8. The pawn on g6, rather than g7, proves beneficial for white. Black captured the pawn on e4, but white played a bold move, king to d1, indicating the intention to play rook to e1 and win material along the file. Black played queen to d5, but after bishop to d2, black had no defense for the exposed king and the hanging rook. With no way to save the rook and the vulnerable king, white had a completely winning position. Let's move on to the third trap in the Scotch game. Another common move for black in this position is knight to f6, which is actually the most played move. In this variation, white can exploit the weakness of the f7 square by playing knight to g5, targeting the pawn on f7. Black's most natural response is pawn to d5, aiming to defend the pawn and counterattack white's bishop on c4. After the trade on d5 and black's recapture with the knight, we reach a critical point in the game, where white has once again achieved a winning position within just 6 moves. It can be quite challenging for black to realize that their last move, knight takes d5, was a fatal error, despite it seeming like the most natural move to play. This situation is reminiscent of the fried liver attack, a tactical sequence commonly seen in chess. However, instead of immediately capturing on d5, which would allow black to play queen e7 check and disrupt white's plans, it is crucial for white to first castle. By doing so, white maintains significant pressure on black's position, with threats emanating from the knight and bishop along the diagonal, an imminent rook attack on black's exposed king, and the possibility of moves like queen f3 to target both the knight and f7 pawn simultaneously. Black often plays bishop to e7 to protect the king, but even at this moment, white sacrifices the knight on f7. After the king captures the knight, white continues the attack with moves like queen h3 check and knight to c3, delivering a double attack on the king and the knight on d5. Black's king is now completely exposed and vulnerable to white's easy attack. Black usually responds with bishop to e6, leading to trades of the bishops. It becomes evident that the black king is in significant trouble. White can continue the attack with simple moves like rook to e1 check, and if the king retreats, queen b3 check from the other side. Black's position quickly collapses, and white can win material, such as capturing the pawn on b7. The king remains under pressure, and black's attempts to defend are ineffective. In another scenario, if black tries to defend the pawn on f7 and counterattack white's bishop on c4 by playing knight to c5, white has an interesting option. By playing bishop to e3, white saves the bishop and maintains pressure. If black plays pawn to h6, hoping to force the knight to retreat, white can counter with pawn to f4, further intensifying the attack. This leads to an intriguing position with tactical possibilities. After the opponent captures your knight, you capture their knight in return. Now their knight on f6 is hanging and doesn't have many options. It will likely capture on e4, and in response, white plays queen takes d4, attacking the knight. In most cases, opponents will retreat their knight to c5, intending to save it. However, some opponents who regularly solve tactical drills may find a tactical shot that they believe is winning for them, which is the move knight to g3. This move takes advantage of the fact that white's rook is pinned to the pawn on e4, and they may think it gives them an advantage. This situation can be seen as a puzzle, and I encourage you to think about it. If you can find a winning move for white, please write it down in the comments. In most cases, though, black will go back to c5, and in response, white simply castles. Although black is currently a pawn up, their position is not easy. White exerts significant pressure on the black position, particularly on the e7 pawn, which often leads to black trading off their bishop. After pawn takes, black's main problem is that they are underdeveloped, while white has successfully developed their pieces. Furthermore, the pawn on g5 becomes a weakness, and white also attacks the a7 pawn, which is only defended by the black rook. At this point, many opponents will play pawn to b6, covering the a7 pawn and setting a small trap. They hope that you will play a casual move like knight to c3, allowing them to pin your queen and potentially win the game. However, falling into this trap would be a rookie error. Instead, after pawn to b6, white plays queen d5, executing a double attack. The e7 square is threatened with checkmate, as well as the rook on a8. Black cannot defend both, so they will likely lose the rook on a8, resulting in a winning position for white once again. It would be interesting to know how these traps work out for you. If you successfully trap your opponent using these tactics, feel free to share your games in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with future videos. Take a moment to check out the other videos appearing on your screen right now. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care and peace.